Hello and welcome back. We will be continuing our work with making another room, in this case, working on creating a high score screen. That way the player can see what their score was at the end as well as the overall high score. So to get started, of course, we're going to create another room. Right click, create, and room. I'm going to call this one score screen. Score screen. Now with this made, I'm going to go ahead and put some decoration in place just so it looks nice, or at least better. I'm just going to, again, pick another background and go over to creating a new sprite. Or actually, first, let's make a tile set. So go ahead and select a new tile set. I'm going to use the same background one and just put the same little screen. Maybe make the little bottom a little more interesting. Again, very simple, nothing too crazy. Again, you can make yours look far prettier than mine. All right, it looks good enough. Go ahead and save this. All right, we've got our room. We have our tiles. Make sure we're over in the instance layer and let's go back over to assets. Now, I'm going to want to create another sprite for an appropriate message at the end. So I'm actually going to duplicate my title screen sprite and go in here and do a couple of modifications. So this is, of course, not going to be the title screen. This will be the score screen. Edit the image. I don't want this text anymore. Let me get a larger brush size. No to this text. Instead, what I'm going to use is going to be another text box, but this time I'm going to say press enter to return to title screen. All right, looks good. Save that. All right, we've got our room built. We've got our sprite built. Let's go ahead and add an object. We're gonna create a brand new object, create object. And this will be obj underscore score screen. And in here, we're gonna set up some work in a moment. We're also going to create another object. And this one will be obj underscore endGame. So with these two, the endGame object is going to be the one that I'm going to put this sprite to. Let's see. Score screen, there we go. And move over to our room. And go ahead and drag over our endGame. Press return to return to the misspelled title screen. So I'm going to just pop back over to score screen sprite and fix that mistake. That looks good enough. All right, going back to our room. We've got that in, looks nice, good to go. Let's go ahead and for that object for endGame, we go ahead and add another key up event for enter. And this is we're going to have game underscore restart. This will throw us back to the first room by restarting the entire game. All right, we've got that there. We're good to go. Everything looks good. But we're going to have to piece together the rest of our game. And we're needing to actually create our score screen. So before we can build the score, we're going to need to address how the game currently ends. Right now, when the player dies, the game just restarts. We're going to need to update what we do with that collision. Here, with the game start, we're going to instead delete this section and add a little bit of code to address what we want to do instead. So of course, whenever we die, we're going to have a room go to next. That'll have us go to the next room, the title screen. All right. I'll also want to deal with saving my score. Right now, with how the score works, you get your score, it goes up, you end the game, and then it's lost. It's not saving it between games. It's not saving it between us closing down and restarting our computers. To address that, we're going to want to create a file that we save our stuff inside of. So I'm going to do any underscore open. It's going to open up any file in our apps data on the computer to allow us to write to a file and reference it later on. So I'm going to open up the file data.any. It doesn't exist initially. We're going to create it once we run that line. Then I'm going to reference a global variable, global.finalScore. This is going to represent whatever our current score is by obj underscore score dot the score. And for those of you that may have forgotten, if we go back to our score, we do have a variable under create called the score. That's what we're referencing here. We're grabbing that and storing it to a global variable that can be referenced in different rooms. In our case, in our score screen room. Now that we've got that, let's go ahead and figure out what the high score is. Global.highScore is equal to reading the any file to find the data section, grabbing the key for high score. And if there's nothing there, we initialize it just to 0. All right, now we have our final score, whatever the player just got. The overall high score, whatever we have written to this file initially, if there's nothing there, we just give it a 0. And then we're going to do an if statement. If the object score dot the score, or actually more appropriately, global dot final score is equal to or is greater than the global dot high score, then that tells us, all right, the person just made the new high score. Their current score beat the previous high score. So we're going to write to that any file under the data section for the high score. It's going to be replacing whatever the value associated with the high score key to now be global dot final score. Now let's also grab global dot high score and update it to be our global dot final score. Now we have, if our final score is higher than the old high score, update that file to write that new score into it, and update our own personal records right now in the game that the high score is now our current score. Then most importantly, remember to close this file. If you don't, it could cause problems down the line. Now we have created a data.ini file. Go inside of it. We're able to have a key value pair of the high score and whatever the score is. We check to see what our current score is, the final score, what the high score overall was from that file. If the final score is higher than the high score, update it in the file and update our own high score to reflect that. Otherwise, we don't need to change anything and we can close it. The important piece here is that we figured out what the final score is and what the overall high score is, and then it gets updated if we did score higher. This is necessary for whenever we go into our object that is going to represent the score. In our case, that'll be object scoreScreen. So with that, we're going to move over to this new object, add an event. In this case, we're going to do another draw. With our draw event, here we're going to be drawing out draw scores. Let's zoom in for y'all. I don't need this portion and this one. So in here, for our object scoreScreen in the draw, we're going to reference the same bit of information that I had before. I'm actually going to be using some of our code that we had from our previous score. Let's grab this and go back to our scoreScreen. Zoom in. Actually, I'm going to rename this to be something more appropriate. scoreText. Control V, we've gotten our previous code. We figure out where the camera is, get it centered nice and pretty. We're going to draw in using that same score font that we had from before. Set it to white to make it look nice. You can change around the colors for what you want here. Maybe you want to increase the font size and make it larger. Again, your game, you can play around with it however you see fit. Now here, I'm going to make a new variable called text. Text will represent the big message we're going to end up using and providing right there. I'm also gonna, let's see. Yeah, that looks good. So let's go back here. I'm gonna leave the values for the positioning where they are. Here, I'm gonna say top score, colon space, close quotation mark, and we're gonna add the string of our global dot high score. Again, this is important to cast it into a string because our high score, of course, is a number. We're going to add to this a \n to force it to the next line. I'm gonna hit enter and tab it over. \n to force it into the next line, and then have your score, colon space, close quotation marks, adding our string for the global dot final score. Close quotation marks. And so notice I hit plus to break it. After an operator, you can force it into the next line to just make it look prettier. The code understands that with an operator, it needs something, at least a binary operator, needs something on both sides. And so since it sees nothing here, it'll try to pull it from the next line. So it makes it easier for us to just read the code. Now this will print out top score, your score, and then that'll represent the variable text, and down here it gets displayed. So let's go ahead to our score screen, back under assets, in the instance layer. I'm going to drag scoreText in here. Doesn't matter where because it's specifically told to print out in a certain spot. Now let's run the screen and let's see what happens. Press enter to start. I hit enter. We're now in the game. Go through. All right, top score is 10. Your score is 10. Looks good so far. Let me hit enter again. Takes me back to our title screen. Hit enter. Jump back into the game. Let me try to score higher to show that it updates. See, now it's 17. It updates that. And then, of course, if we were to lose immediately, your score is 0. The top score is still our previous top score. So we've got that going. Now we have one last thing to do. Before I had mentioned I had made 3 sounds. Pew and kill were the only ones that I added here. I'm going to go ahead and add one more sound. This will be SND underscore death. This will be referencing our noise. And so now I have a noise to represent the player's death. Let's go back to player and back in this collision thing. Before we go to the next room, let's go ahead and add in the code to play a new sound. And so let's drop over to that section of code. We will zoom in just so we can see it. Audio underscore play underscore sound, and we're just going to reference SND underscore death, comma, 0, 0, and we're good to go. Now, whenever I play this, let's go ahead and build this again. Select enter, we're in the game. I'm shooting, making the points, scores. We've got the death noise, made it all the way to the end. Your score is 2, the top score is 17. We're good to go, and it saved it from the last time we played, so everything looks to be working well. You can, of course, continue to play around with this, mess with this, make it pleasing to you. This is, after all, your game. If you have any questions, just let me know in class. Otherwise, that's all we've got for today. Have a good one, and until next time.